And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
This is your RBLR Rays podcast. I'm your host, Zach Dobb, along with my co-host, Pat Davenport. Pat, how you doing?
You know what? I'm actually a little under the weather today. I'm a little sick. I've got a little bit of a cough. I've got a little bit of a croaky throat today. I'm trying my best to battle through it. But I'm also feeling like a baseball sicko because I've actually sat down and done research into the Rule 5 draft today, which I feel like only the sickest of baseball twisted minds actually do. So I'm feeling sick, but I'm also feeling pretty sick because I'm on the RBLR ratio.
As you should, and you should feel sick if you're watching us, the good kind, not the bad kind. We appreciate all of you that are joining us this morning on this fine Saturday morning. We've got a lot to talk about. We got a jam-packed show for you today. We've got free agency, what's been going on around the AL East, quite a lot. How does it affect the Rays? We're going to talk about it. We'd love to hear what you think, too. Like Pat just said, we're going to break down the Rule 5 draft. Who did the Rays lose? Who did the Rays add? And then we're going to do a player review of one of the most contested players maybe in Rays history, one of the most polarizing players in Rays history, perhaps, just for on-field reasons. Brandon Lowe. We're going to talk about him. How was his year last year? What's his future with the team? We're going to talk about it all. If you want to know anytime we go live, which you should, drop us a follow, drop us a subscribe. That way you'll know anytime we go live. It also helps us out a lot if you enjoyed the show and you want to subscribe or follow us. That helps us out so much. It's free. It shows us you support the show, helps us out so much. If this is your first time here, thank you. We appreciate you. Drop us a like if you enjoy it. But we're going to get right into the meat of it. And the meat of it is free agency has kind of exploded since we last spoke. Soto has signed, thankfully not in division anymore, and a lot of other moves that have happened. When we look at the AL East, what do you think is the most of the moves that has happened so far? What's the most consequential move that's happened so far in respect to the Rays?
I think it's got to be Garrett Crochet going to the Red Sox. I think that's the one that moves the needle the most for another team in the division. You could say that Soto not going back to the Yankees is also a big needle mover, but that's a move that didn't happen. In terms of the moves that did happen, I would say Crochet going to the Red Sox is a big move for them. I think they were kind of crying out for like a proper ace in that staff. Yeah. Their pitching staff last year was quite a lot better than what I predicted they were going to be. And they actually kind of rode their pitching for good chunks of the season, which is not what we expected the Red Sox to look like. But they didn't have like a big time guy, like a big ace type pitcher to lead the staff. And Crochet is going to do exactly that because he is nails out there. He's nasty. And I think the Red Sox are a clear need and they've addressed it. They might not be done. They might go get another starting pitcher as well. I think there's still a couple of holes in their lineup, but the Red Sox are starting to look ready to properly compete again sooner rather than later, which is annoying if you're a Rays fan because the Rays definitely have some clear holes as well. I'd say the Rays and Red Sox are about similar levels in terms of how powerful their team is and how they're expected to compete next year. With the Orioles and Yankees already in that mix, the Red Sox getting better adds another rival to what the Rays are trying to do. So that makes things really difficult.
Yeah, and I think that, the more that this division beats up on itself, the more difficult it is to get to a playoff spot. I think there's been some years in the past where we've kind of feasted off the bad Orioles when they were really bad, or the Red Sox when they've been bad, or the Blue Jays when they've been bad. The thing that I think is going to be even more difficult about this division is as everybody gets better, the Orioles are, instead of being a pushover, they are now a contender for, the division. The Blue Jays have a lot of talent. Will they ever put it together? The Yankees are going to buy as much talent as money can buy. And now the Red Sox are putting some talent together. So now it becomes a lot more difficult to get that playoff spot. I think that the big thing for the Red Sox was they didn't have to give up any of their massive prospects. They didn't have to move Roman Anthony. That's a big deal for them. He's someone that could affect them this year. He's a crazy prospect for them. And they didn't have to move him. So it was a really good move by the Red Sox GM. And I kind of agree with you because when I look at the Yankees, what they've added more pitching. The pitching was not their biggest issue when you look at last year. The pitching was not their biggest problem. It was the offense outside of Judge and Soto. Soto's now gone. And you also shipped off Gleyber Torres in order to bring in Devin Williams. So now you even further, and you also shipped out Mr. Cortez. So it's a very I would say it's an upgrade, but I don't know that the team is that much better for adding Devin Williams. And then Max Fried is really, really good, sure, but the pitching is still your strength. Not much has changed in that aspect. You just look at the offense, and you just have to. Now you're just looking at Aaron Judge and I don't know Giancarlo Stanton. You hope that as if you're a Yankees fan, turns it on. But I really agree with you because I don't think any of the other teams in the division have made a significant move to get better. The Orioles bringing on Tyler O'Neill just replaces Santander's production. They kind of telegraphed that they're not going to try to bring him back. To me, with that move, it was basically said we're done with Santander. So that to me is just a replacement, a little cheaper replacement for what you already had. So you don't make the team any better than that. The Rays haven't made a move to make them significantly better either. So right as it stands right now, everybody else is pretty much the same. Yankees a little worse. Blue Jays about the same. Orioles about the same. Red Sox a little better.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say the Rays adding Danny Jansen might add a win above replacement.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But is that the difference between 80 wins and 86? Nope.
It is not.
So, I mean, this is a broad off-season question. Eric Neander was on MLB Network the day of the Rule 5, just before Rule 5, I think, and he was saying that he seems like he made it kind of hinted that the Rays aren't going to make any significant adds. It's going to be a pretty quiet off season for them. It's just going to be kind of minor league deals, maybe a couple of tiny trades, but nobody significant is going to get added. We didn't get Kyle Tucker, I don't think there's anyone that's close to coming on board. We definitely aren't going to sign a free agent, I don't think. In the trade market, if there's a fit, sure, but I think more likely is we're just going to be sitting on our hands and hoping that Morel's going to get better, Josh Lowe's going to get better, and that DeLuca will replace Siri well enough, and kind of everyone stays healthy-ish. Are you concerned by that?
So concerned is maybe not the right word. I would say disappointed by that. I would have liked to see us add somebody. I don't know that I would say concerned because I think last year's team was about the worst results you could get out of this group of players. I don't think I think that was the floor. We just saw the floor. That's the floor of this team, I believe, as currently constructed. I don't think they can play much worse than that. I don't think you can have all those players be injured or have low performances the way they did last year. You also have to think about from a pitching perspective, we're adding guys back in as well that are gonna bring value and retaining guys. Because if he's saying we're not gonna, there's not gonna be much going on, the hope would be that means that we're also not moving anybody major. So we're not moving Jeffrey Springs. We're not moving Zach Littell. We're not moving Yondier Bilau. We're staying with the team as constructed because we think that's where we sit right now as our best plan at the moment. It's disappointing because I would have liked to see us add a little bit more. And I think this team could be really, really good if you add, if you go get Santander and plug him in right now. Yes, he's expensive, and yes, he's old. But if we're talking about making the team better right now, old is probably a bit much, but he's older. And so the team is instantly better if you do that. The team could also be instantly better if on day one of 2025, Junior Camarero just figures it out, and he's just figured it out through the offseason. He figures it out through spring training, and he's the kind of guy he's been all through the minor leagues. If he just shows up on opening day and is that guy, problem solved. I mean, I can't blame them too much because in reality, you've got 3 or 4 guys on the team that could be your solution if things go right. If Brandon Lowe stays healthy, we're going to talk about this in a minute, we know what he can do. If Yandy Diaz gets back to what he should be, we know what he could do. If Josh Lowe replicates his season from a season ago, there's so many things. If any of those things go right and everybody else just plays kind of what we expect, then it does kind of work itself out because there is talent on this roster. There are a lot of really good players on this roster. I think I may have undersold it in the past because I felt like that there is a hole in the outfield, and I still feel that way. But that being said, if Palacios goes out there and does what he did in his sample size last season over an entire season and just decides to lock that down, and maybe it's not a power spot for us, but it's a really consistent on base and, put the ball in play. He bats 320, competes for the batting title or something like that. Like, if that's what we get out of that spot, then that'll be fine. Like, there are lots of versions of this team where the current talent roster that we have ends up in 90 to 95 wins. There's a lot of scenarios where that happens. There are also scenarios where we win 82 games. Like, both scenarios exist out there for this team looking at next season. The question is, for me, and the reason why I say disappointing is because if it's, in my opinion, I would rather raise the floor. Like, if you add Anthony Santander, your floor now, instead of being 80 games, maybe now it becomes 83 games. And if that's your floor, you don't have to get very far off the floor to be in the playoffs. That's what I'm looking for. The truth is the Rays don't really run their organization that way. They really never have. That's not the way they do things. They're not going to go out and spend on big free agents to raise the floor of the team, especially when the floor is already relatively pretty high, I would say. Just looking around baseball. So I wouldn't say I'm concerned because I can't objectively look at the talent roster of this team and say that they're terrible. It's just not true. As a fan, you always want them to add and be better. But when you look at the talent on this team, it's undeniable what is there and what they could be. I just wish they would raise the floor a little bit more, but that's just me being a greedy fan. So.
Yeah, it's just we're used to the floor of this team being 88 wins,
right,
over the past 6 years or so,
right.
And this is, been, like you said, those worst results have come and injuries have struck, and we've had a lot of bad luck over these past couple of years, I would say, which has caused the floor to drastically fall down a long way, and the Rays didn't build that initial floor that we, from 2018 to 2023. That floor wasn't built by signing big free agents.
No,
that was through patience and being 500 a couple times. So we might have to do that process again. And it's a shame, but unfortunately, when you're a team that doesn't spend, I don't want to say cannot spend, but doesn't spend, then that's the cycle you've got to go through. Now, the Rays have done a pretty good job of keeping that cycle going relatively seamlessly without a drop-off in the floor, but these inevitably happen. Bad results come through, and that can shake up how your whole philosophy is. What I do want to say is optimism for next year. Can you, the pitching staff will carry us so far next year. Unbelievably far that you cannot believe. From July 1st till the end of last season, which is when, Jeff Springs was back, or everyone except McClanahan was on the team. We weren't throwing Tyler Alexander out and Erasmo Ramirez out all the time. This is when the pitching staff looked like it was kind of projected to. We had a 3.21 ERA as a team. That was the best in all of baseball, any team. That's better than the Red Hot Tigers, who were red hot in the second half, better than the Mariners that keep getting touted as the best pitchers in MLB, better than any playoff team. Mm-hmm. The problem was, last year, our team hit to a 95 WRC plus, which was in the bottom 10 in baseball. It was really bad.
Yeah.
If this team was league average, if this team hit to a 100 WRC plus, you could totally imagine a world where we win 88 to 90 games.
And the truth is, when you look at the history of this team over the past 5 to 6 years, they're averaging about a 105 WRC plus, or they were, if you take last year out. That's what the team has done. Now, there's been some talent that has left and talent that's come and gone. But I think this team is much more likely to get back to that kind of production than to stay where we are right now. And I agree with you. The pitching staff is going to be one of the most underrated, especially for the first couple months of the season. But when you look at the team, what the kind of talent that's going to be available at the rotation, and the kind of guys that we aren't even putting on our rotation, there's going to be guys starting in AAA this year that would start for lots of organizations. That's how good our staff is going to be. as long as nobody gets hurt. And the one other thought that I've had this for a long time, is the Rays as an org have got so unlucky for so many years. If we just get 1 year, if we just get one like magic year, kind of like the Orioles had the year before last, where everything just kind of went right for them. If we got a year like that where we just didn't have any big injuries and everybody basically played to or above their expectations, this team would win a lot of games. This team could be a 100-game contender 100%. So, and that's without adding anybody big. So I think that's the context to kind of look at this in. As a fan, am I disappointed? Yes, I am. I'd like to add people. But if we're looking at the talent roster of this team objectively, the talent exists to be competitive right now. And adding a couple of guys raises that floor, and it could raise your ceiling too. But again, when you add somebody, when you bring in a Santander or whoever else, you're going to block a Chandler Simpson. You're going to block, a Brad Braylor. Oh my goodness! You're going to block a Guerrero. Just going to say a Guerrero in the future. You're going there are effects of adding guys like that. You're going to block a Trey Morgan. Like, you're going to block guys by bringing in that kind of talent. And there's a lot of it at the minor league level right now. And you just look down the list of if you just go to MLB.com /MILB /prospects /Rays, and you just look at the guys that are there and the talent level that is already in the minors right now, bringing in guys that are older and are going to block spots doesn't make sense when you look at that. As much as I would like it as a fan, there's so much talent there, especially offensively. It just doesn't make sense to bring guys in right now, as much as I would like it.
Yeah, I mean, there are some spots where it does make sense, but will it be worth the price in either money or prospects that they're giving up? Hard to say. I think there is a world where you could trade a Jeff Springs. You could trade one of our starting pitchers, a Rasmussen, a Littell, and you could get a bat for that, or someone that's like close to being major league ready as a bat, because you could trade from a position of strength to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the Rays will only do that if they see a really good deal, a really good fit.
And the thing about trading from a position of strength too is, if you trade from a position of strength, it's no longer as much of a strength as it was before. And starting pitching is a position where, if you trade from that position and then something happens to that position, that's the quickest way to hamper your team. And I think that's something that, as we've watched what the Rays are willing to trade, they're only gonna trade starting pitching if it becomes expensive. That seems to be the way that they do things, and they only seem to let go of starting pitching if it becomes expensive. They don't seem to trade away young, controllable, good starting pitching, because that's kind of the way they build their brand. And that's kind of what Jeffrey Springs isn't young, but like, he's controllable, good starting pitching, and he's not expensive. So I agree. If I was the GM, I would have been on the phone with Houston trying to get Kyle Tucker, 100%, and I would have given a lot to get him, because he fixes so many of the problems. When we look at the Rays offense, if you just insert Kyle Tucker, the offense is basically fixed. Like,
do you have those intrusive thoughts about going, hold on, we could have traded Paredes and like a couple of okay prospects for Kyle Tucker?
I try not to think about those things. I try to leave those thoughts somewhere else, because and who knows? Like, I don't know what there's so many different variables that lead to that. The thing that's interesting about that, though, is I know for a fact, I've seen a lot of scoops that the Yankees were really, really in on Tucker, and they felt like they gave a competitive offer, and the Astros didn't want to trade with them. I almost wonder if the Astros said, we're not trading him to the AL.
Maybe.
And they said, we're going to trade him to the NL. Because I think they could have gotten more from the Yankees than they got for him. So maybe the thought was, we're going to get the best thing we can from somebody because like, if they trading him to us would not have been quite as bad as trading him to the Yankees, but it would have been pretty close. Because I mean, like, that's pretty close. That fixes so many of our problems as a team, makes us a huge threat in the AL. You get him out of the AL, to me, that makes more sense. And it seems to me like that's kind of what the Astros mindset was. So maybe he was never even available for us. I don't know.
Yeah, and also, like, they wouldn't have moved it Tucker at the deadline last year.
No, they would not have.
So it's one of those. You just now eyes are on Chris Morrell, I suppose. I think he has the potential to really break out, but we'll have to wait and see. He's not a lock to break out. The Rays love him, so hopefully he comes to at least some of what the Rays hope he can be. Otherwise, maybe we'll be kicking ourselves down the line. But that regardless, this is completely irrelevant to the Rays thought, but everyone's harping on the Paredes to the Astros. I was like, oh, they got their Bregman replacement. And I'm like, brother, who's your Kyle Tucker replacement?
Yep.
Yeah, you got your Bregman replacement, but now you've lost Kyle Tucker as well. So I'm wondering about where the Astros are going to end up. But that's a different part for a different day.
The dirty little secret in MLB is that the Astros are going to be bad in short order. Their farm system is gone. They have very few prospects at all that are going to be of note that are going to be coming up. Once Bregman leaves, if they don't find a way to retain Jordan, they're basically sunk. Like they're not going to be good. That's the little secret about them. A little secret across MLB for a lot of people, I think, is the Rule 5 draft. Not a lot of people, like when I was a casual fan before I really got into the Rays more deeply, I had no idea what the Rule 5 draft was at all, was confused about it for a long time. We explained it a little bit earlier in the offseason. Now that we've gotten to the draft, a little bit of a kind of an addendum to that. One of the things to keep in mind with the Rule 5 draft when we talk about the guys that the Rays have added, in order for those guys to stick, they have to stay on the 40-man roster all season. You cannot move them off. They have to be on there, which is why we see pitchers get picked most frequently, because it is pretty easy to hide a pitcher. And you also see guys like one of the Rays picks, guys that are on the IL, get picked because you can just keep them on the IL and not worry about them for a while. And the Rays kind of hit both boxes with their ads in the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah. So the Rule 5 draft, interesting. 15 picks got taken this year. The Rays picked up 2, one with their traditional pick and one they traded for, which is something you can do. You can trade for another team's Rule 5 pick. It just means that they are still under Rule 5 roster rules when you trade for them. And that's kind of actually what happened with Kevin Kelly. We say it was a Rule 5 pick by the Rays. It actually wasn't, but they traded for him immediately after he was picked. So he fell under Rule 5 rules. Okay, so it was actually a busy Rule 5 day for the Rays. They picked number 8 in the Rule 5 draft, and they take Nate Lavender, who's a left-handed reliever who was originally in the Mets system. He was starting to get quite high up in there, but then he got derailed by a pretty significant injury, and will actually start the season, like you said, on the 60-day IL. So you'll join the Rays 40-man, but we'll quickly, once that opens up as an option again, we'll quickly go to the 60-day IL, open up another 40-man roster spot, which is useful because then the Rays get a guy on there that they can keep, but isn't actively holding a roster spot, which is pretty good. He's not a big stuff guy, is Nate Lavender. He's kind of like not high velocity, but he's got good command, and he has potential to be a really good kind of middle to kind of back end guy in the bullpen. I'd say like somewhere between the 6th and the 8th. I don't think he's good enough to be a closer, but he seems pretty fun, pretty interesting. He's a nice little experiment for the Rays. They love these kind of guys that like have good command, but also have a bit of injury problem. Like he's a guy that the Rays love to exploit and turn into something really, really great. So he's an interesting pick. Do you have any other thoughts about Nate Lavender?
The Rays love their lefty relievers that are not necessarily high octane stuff, but have some kind of funky stuff to them. It's funny. The thing that I found was funny was that Kevin Ebach, the Rays assistant general manager, what he said about him after they picked him was he's got multiple pitches to get guys out, like the fastball, like the deception he brings from the left side. Doesn't that just sound like so many of the guys the Rays have churned through over the years? It just seems like he's another Kevin Kelly type, another type that they think he's got some cool things in his arsenal. They like what he can do, and they're willing to take the flyer on him because they could stick him on the IL, let him rehab, let him kind of get back up to speed, and then maybe we'll see him at end of 2025 or beginning of 2026.
Yeah, I really like him. He has insane strikeout numbers in the Mets minor league system.
Yep.
Really does walk a little bit more than you want, but again, this sounds like the thing the Rays will fix. They love to do that. So yeah, he's such a Rays target, and the Rays have had a bit of an infatuation lately with Mets pitchers. They picked up a lot of Mets minor league pitching lately, so watch this space on that. And then they also made a trade for a different pick, which was the number 14 pick, originally made by the Phillies, to get Mike Vasil, who is also in the Mets system. And he's a right-handed starter. He is healthy, and he put up some pretty bad numbers last year in AAA for the Syracuse Mets. But he has really good command, can pitch a lot of innings, and I think the Rays don't actually aren't that fussed if they keep this guy or not. I think he's a guy that will come in as competition in spring, could stick on the roster if they want this guy to be the Erasmo, the Tyler Alexander, not Scott Alexander. He could be the Tyler Alexander, the Erasmo, where he kind of just goes, oh no, Shane Baz and McClanahan are hurt to start the year. Taj is inconsistent. Let's get a guy that can just throw a bunch of innings and has good command, so can get a lot of ground balls and stuff. That's Mike Vasil. He can do that. He's just like an extra depth piece. And if everyone's healthy, they won't need him. They'll just ship him back to the Mets, is I think the plan for Mike Vasil. I think he's a solid enough option to come in as a low kind of effort and a low stakes kind of just extra arm that could be used in a pinch. That's how I see Mike Vasil anyway.
So here's my tinfoil hat theory when it comes to Mike Vasil, and it relates to Shane McClanahan. Here's my theory. Shane McClanahan, to bring him back off of injury. My theory is they know he's going to be good for about 3 to 4 innings to get started. He's not going to be going deep in games. So their thought was, let's get some guys that can provide innings when we need them, when we know that we're going to, if we look in the first 3 months of the season, we know there's a certain amount of innings that have to be pitched. Shane McClanahan's going to be starting a decent portion of those games, but he's not going to fulfill the innings need that we were going to have for him. So we're going to bring in some other guys like a Mike Vasil to fill that innings gap that we're going to have. I think that's kind of the thought process. It's another one of these guys that I like to talk about as the restart button that you could bring in. And he had a really nice season in 2023, couldn't replicate it in 2024, but had a really nice season there. Maybe they can re-unlock some of that magic from 2023, bring it here into 2025 and give him a spot start here or there, or be that reset button after a rough start from a young guy, or just the few innings that you want to send McClanahan out there as he gets back on the horse for the first half of the season.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He's also a big dude. He's like 6'5", 225. So
they're like tall guys.
Yeah, those big dudes, they create good angles, pitching downwards, and they also can do good extension, which allows their velocity to play up as well. Just going into spring training, the Rays have the following amount of people that could realistically start a major league game for them. Keep count on your fingers at home, folks. Shane McClanahan, Ryan Pepio, Jeffrey Springs, Zach Littell, Taj Bradley, Mike Vasil, Joe Rock, Ian Seymour, Drew Rasmussen, and I think there is one more. I think I'm forgetting someone really obvious. Is there someone else I'm forgetting, Zach?
I was mostly focusing on counting. I wasn't really listening.
But that's 9.
Did you say Jeffrey Springs?
9. I did say Jeff Springs.
Okay. I think that's just about everybody. Yeah.
So we got 9. We got 9 guys that could realistically start a major league game for us next year. I was surprised to hear Neander say that he considers Drew Rasmussen in the mix for the starting rotation next year.
I was too. That was interesting. That was an interesting statement that he made.
Because I thought he was going to be fully a reliever, like a 1 to 2 inning reliever. Now that he's back from a second Tommy John, but apparently they're gonna try. But then we've only got 5 spots. But then I guess you could argue maybe they do a 6-man rotation, because especially at the start of the year when you said, guys like Rasmussen, McClanahan might not be going 5 innings until at least May. You could realistically go, hey, why don't we just run a 6-man rotation? We got the guys that could do it.
Yeah, I mean, they really have given themselves a lot of options when it comes to how they want to structure the pitching staff. It'll be something that's fun to talk about throughout the offseason, especially as we get into spring training, see how guys are looking, see how Shane looks. And that's going to be something that stay tuned for more of that conversation, because we're going to be having quite a bit of it throughout the rest of the offseason, I think.
For sure. Also, as a busy day for the Rays Rule 5, Evan Reifert, who we suspected might get snagged, did with the number 5 pick. The Nationals have him now. So good luck, Evan Reifert. If you can stay on that Major League roster, then you'll be a National. Also, did you see the stop about
I did.
Liam Hicks? So for anyone that didn't know, Topkin tweeted that the Rays are trading up to get the Marlins number 2 pick in the Rule 5 draft, which was catcher Liam Hicks from the Tigers organization. And then they said, oh, wait, no, they're not. So it sounds like the Rays made a serious effort to get him.
Yeah, which is interesting because they just added a catcher. So it just goes to show that catcher is still something that they are not locked in on catcher. They are still looking around for catching prospects.
Because Jansen's going to be 1A, but it sounds like they're not convinced about either Rotvet or Driscoll completely, because they wanted to add Liam Hicks, who's another lefty hitting catcher, into that mix and for competition. So it sounded like they wanted to be like, yeah, we could run with those 2 guys, but could we have a look at Liam Hicks as well, just in case? Because we're not like, oh, Rotvet's our guy or Driscoll's our guy. Interesting that the Rays are still looking at trying to take on a couple more catches, and it kind of shows how they view their current set of them and how confident they are that they're continuing to try and take chances on guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team that likes to have options. They're looking for multiple options out there for catcher right now. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for options when it comes to their wardrobe. They don't have a lot of confidence in what's there right now. They want to find something that they can wear with confidence every single day and know that it's going to go out there and put up excellent numbers from a wardrobe perspective. And I can tell you where to get that solution. Shop.rrealsports.com, where you can use promo code FLAPPY to get 10% off all of the best Tampa Bay sports team inspired merch out there. Rays, Bucks, Lightning, Rowdies. It's all out there. That's the wrong order for the R's, but all those are there. Promo code FLAPPY, FLAPPY for 10% off everything there. Shop.rrealsports.com.
Yeah, they ain't moving to another roster anytime soon. They're all going to be staying put. They're going to be added to your 40 t-shirt roster. It's 40 t-shirts too.
That's a lot of t-shirts.
That's a lot of t-shirts. But if I tell you what, they'd be in your 26 active t-shirts.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You wouldn't be storing them in the back of the closet. Anyway, let's do another player review, because we're kind of behind on them this offseason. We need to get some player reviews.
We need to get some player reviews done. And we're going to talk about one of the most polarizing players on the Rays roster. We're talking exclusively about on-field production here. That's Brandon Lowe. He is somebody that I don't know that there's – I really can't think of anybody that's been more polarizing as a player, as in, what's his value? How good is he? Do we want him on the team? Can you think of anybody else that's been more polarizing than him?
Ooh, I don't think so. Maybe polarizing for not on-field reasons, maybe. But for on-field, like Brandon Lowe's a pretty quiet, private guy. He doesn't talk much about non-baseball related matters, and he keeps himself out of shenanigans more often than not. So yeah, I mean, for just on-field reasons, he is super polarizing. And you know what? I can't actually really figure out why. I don't think, because he has been really good as a Ray since 2019, which is kind of when he properly started full time. He, since 2019, is the second most WAR amongst Rays position players. And he is second in he's third in WRC plus. So he's been great since coming to the Rays. I know he has a lot of swing and miss in his game, and he has some injury problems. Those are the 2 big weaknesses of Brandon Lowe. But he's also probably the most consistent power threat we have had on the team for the past 5 years. And he's also kind of just been what you're going to get out of him most of the time, I think. What are your views on Brandon Lowe?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think anyone who's watched the show for very long knows that he's my favorite player on the Rays. And the reason why he's my favorite player is because I am a sucker for the long ball. I love home runs, and I also am just a sucker for guys that are really, really good, which is what Brandon Lowe is. He has hit 21 home runs 2 consecutive years. He has also struck out over 26% of the time 2 years straight. He is averaging above, like right around a 220 ISO, which means a lot of power. He is averaging around a 120 WRC plus over the last 2 years. He's also averaging about 105, 107 games played.
Oh, we've lost Zach. Zach has disappeared, and I have been split into 2 different Zachs, apparently. So I'm going to just carry on from his point about Brandon Lowe. Brandon Lowe, this year, had a very Brandon Lowe type year, where he missed a third of the season. He missed 2 months of the season. He played 107 games, which is 2 less than he played in 2023, but considerably more than he played in 2022. But he's still way away from that 2021 season where he played almost 150. His walk percentage way down, but he did put up the same amount of home runs, not as many RBIs, but 2.2 WAR as opposed to 2.9 WAR, 123 WRC plus, which is higher than last year, 116. So Brandon Lowe had a pretty typical Brandon Lowe year. He continues to absolutely clobber the baseball whenever he makes contact, but that K percentage is always pretty nasty. 26.4 is a lot, and a 32.7 whiff percentage is also really bad. It puts him in the bottom 10% in the league. But if he was on any other team, he would be regarded as one of the greats. He'd be considered a top 50 player in baseball when healthy. If you look across players that are primarily second basemen, since 2019, here's the list in terms of offensive output, WRC plus. Jose Altuve has the highest WRC plus as a second baseman since 2019 over the past 5 years, which is 136. Ketel Marte, close behind him at 131. Guess who's in third? Brandon Lowe. He's better than MVP caliber Marcus Semien, better than batting title winner Luis Arias, better than DJ LeMahieu, better than Gleyber Torres, better than Ozzy Albies. He's better at hitting than all of these players and has put up better WAR numbers than quite a lot of these players. In fact, since 2019, among second basemen, he's in the top 10 in WAR, which is 14.2. Again, better than DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Jorge Blanco, Luis Arias, Whit Merrifield. He is better than all of those guys over the past 5 years. And yet people say that he sucks. I really don't understand where this came from. I think Brandon Lowe, if I were to grade him, would probably be a C plus, just because of the amount of time he missed, and he was good, but not like at his best production wise. So we're really just trying to find reasons to hate him. The reasons that we hate him, or I don't hate him, but the reasons that we're trying to, I guess, reasons people think he sucks is because he can't stay healthy. And that's something that the Rays have struggled with across their position player core over the past couple of years, is seeing 1, consistency, and 2, health. And Brandon Lowe can be really streaky and can be really unhealthy. So at his worst, he is exactly everything that's wrong with the Rays roster construction from a lineup position player standpoint. But at his best, he's exactly what the Rays do best: take unknown prospects that have really powerful tools and turn them into really productive hitters. That's what they're planning to do with Chris Morel. And right now, I guess Brandon Lowe is starting to hit the worst end of an aging curve. Is something that concerns us. Is his health going to get any better? Probably not. I don't think we're ever going to see another year where he plays 140 plus games. But is that worth the money they're paying him? I guess is the big question. Welcome back, Zach. I guess what I've been saying
Good to be back.
Yeah, we lost you to the Shadow Realm. Basically, you did what Brandon Lowe does and take a little chunk off on the IL for a little bit every single year. But when you're here, you're amongst the best in the biz in terms of production. We saw a pretty typical Brandon Lowe year, but missing time, essentially, again. Is he worth it going forward?
In 107 games last year, he put up 2.2 F4. We average out that a win above replacement on Fangraphs is worth about 6+ million in terms of actual salary value. So he's being paid appropriately to his market value. The Rays often try to get guys under market value. He will be being paid appropriately to his market value this season. He obviously does take up a big portion of the Rays' salary because they spend so low, but I don't think that's a valid reason to not have him on the team or to get rid of him. He wouldn't be taking up 10 to 20% of the Rays' salary cap if they were spending like most MLB teams spend. So that's not a problem for me. He's getting paid appropriately to his value. Will he ever be playing 140 games again, like you just kind of said? Probably not. But even if he only plays 100 games or 110 games, he still is appropriately valued at about $10 million.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying this earlier. Brandon Lowe amongst primary second basemen since 2019. Here are the players that have got a higher WRC plus than him over the past 5 years. Ketel Marte, Jose Altuve. That's it. Those two are the only two guys who have been better bats than him out of second base. And that includes Luis Arraez, Marcus Semien, all those guys. I don't want to repeat myself, but he's also been a top 10 second baseman in WAR since 2019. If he was on any other team, if he was on the Yankees, they would worship him. He would be, remember all the hype Gleyber Torres was getting when he was first breaking on the scene? He'd be better than that because he's been better than Gleyber Torres in pretty much every metric.
100%.
So I really don't understand the hate. The only thing I could see the frustrations with is his lack of health over the past 3 years.
Yep.
That's the only mitigating factor against him. And I guess the only thing you could wonder is, have we seen the best out of Brandon Lowe? How quickly is he going to decline?
Yep. And I don't think there's really anything you can see in his statistics from last year. There's no glaring oh no, this is a huge red flag. It's basically in line with all of his numbers from previous years. Nothing of concern there. So if he falls off a cliff, which is, anybody could do that, but it's not going to be something you could predict. And he's also as much as he is getting older and his age seems more poignant because of his injury history, he's only in his age 30 season next year. So it's not like he's old. He's just old because he's had injuries. And so we view him that way. But I think if he had no major injury history, we wouldn't be talking about his age very much. It's just because we've seen the injuries that we talk about it. So I don't think that he's necessarily going to just fall off a cliff. It's a question of how much he'll be on the field for. I think he's good for about 100 games.
Yeah, I think that's what we got to come to expect, is that he's going to be there for 100 games. I guess the big question is, right now, I guess the people that could play second base for us, I guess the guy that is in line prospect-wise is Curtis Mead. Would you rather have Curtis Mead or Brandon Lowe for the next 3 years?
The next 3 years. It's really hard for me to not pick Brandon Lowe, but the only thing that gives me pause is as good as Curtis Mead has been at the AAA level and as good things as he's shown at the major league level, it's just hard for me to pull that trigger on what I don't know that I'm going to get from Mead versus Brandon Lowe. It would be really, really close. I'd probably go with Mead only because I don't know what Brandon Lowe's health is going to be. I really have no idea. If you said 2 years, I'd probably still go with Brandon Lowe. But that third year, I feel like I really have to go with Curtis Mead at that point.
Okay, fair enough. And I guess this past year, very similar to his 2023 campaign. What would you give him as a grade?
I'd give him B-, C+.
Yeah, I said C+.
I would say B- because he provided a lot of value when he was there. I give him credit for when he was on the field. He provided 2.2 F4 and a. I think there's not a lot of players that in between injuries could have still hit to a 123 WRC plus like that. So I'll give him credit for that. I'll give him a B minus, but it's like a low B minus. It's right there on the edge.
Yeah, he's on the cusp. And obviously, they picked up his option for 10.5 million this year. They've got another option for him next year. They've got a second club option for 2026, which is 11.5 million, or a $500,000 buyout is where they're at with that. So we'll make this same song and dance, the same decision again next year, I think. Are you convinced he's going to be on the team next year? I
am not.
I mean, opening day this year, should I say?
Oh, yes. He'll be on the roster opening day this year. I believe that. I think if they were going to trade him, they'd have already done it, or they would have let him walk. I don't think they're going to. Now, again, I think he kind of falls in the same bucket as Yandy does, where we talk about we could probably be looking at this again at the All-Star break if he's been healthy, right? Like if he plays all the first half of the year and plays really well, could he get traded? Absolutely, that could happen if the value's right. But if he's playing really well and we get to the All-Star break, chances are this team's pretty good. So there's it's pretty unlikely that if he's having a great year, the rest of the team isn't also having a great year. Because what Brandon Lowe does for this team is provide lineup protection for so many guys. If he's having a year like he's having, chances are other guys are also having a good year. Chances are we're doing pretty well, so he probably wouldn't get traded. I think the more likely scenario is he's in and out of the lineup a little bit. We get to the midpoint, and maybe somebody takes a flyer on him. But I personally think they're gonna end 2025 with Brandon Lowe on the roster. The real question will be what happens with that option, and it's a lot of it's gonna come down to, you mentioned Curtis Mead. What does Curtis Mead's year look like? Does he have a really nice year filling in here and there? Do they feel confident that he can replace Brandon Lowe? Do they like what Aranda has done over the course of the year? It's going to be on the young guys to see if that spot is one they're willing to move on from.
Yeah, it's going to be the Yandy Lowe discourse is going to continue all off season, I think.
It will.
But I think, I think you're completely right in what you're saying, in that if they were going to do it, they would have done it by now. They need offense. It would be weird to trade some away right now. I think it's way more likely that someone like Zach Littell gets traded.
I agree.
Than any of the position players at this point.
Yeah, because again, you talked about trading from a position of strength earlier. That's what pitching is. Offense is not a position of strength right now. They have a lot of prospects from that perspective, but not a lot of MLB ready talent. So they're not going to, I don't think they're going to trade Lowe or Yandy before the season starts. We'll check it again at the All-Star break.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the point you make a lot. You haven't made it today, but you make it a lot, where I don't think other teams value B Lowe as much as the Rays value B Lowe. So the fair market deal will never come across for him. Yeah,
I completely agree with that.
Yeah. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else you want to talk about this week. I mean, we got by the time we talk again, St. Petersburg, or should I say Pinellas County will have voted again. But there's no real updates other than that.
We're gonna hope for the positive on that.
Yeah, I guess the thing to watch out for is, even though they approve it, they're going to approve the money that they agreed to pre-hurricane, pre-delay, and that means the Rays are on the hook money-wise for more kind of cost overrun than they anticipated. And it'll be interesting to see if they try and squeeze the council for more money, or if Stu kind of sucks it up, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah. So unfortunately, more to come on that situation. Hopefully we at least get some positive momentum by getting the bonds approved by Pinellas on Tuesday is when the vote's going to happen. Yeah. So more to come on that. We'll talk about it next week. What I would like to talk about is how grateful I am that all of you who are watching with us have been here with us for the whole show. If you enjoyed the show, if you've got any thoughts on any of the stuff we talked about, any of the free agency stuff we discussed, any of the stuff with Rule 5, any of the stuff with Brandon Lowe, you want to have an opinion on that, you want to talk to us about it, we'd love to hear it. Drop a comment on YouTube, drop a reply on Twitter or any of the other social platforms. We'd love to hear from you guys. We always want to know how you feel about the stuff we're talking about. So please let us know how you feel. If you enjoyed the show, do us a huge favor and drop us a like and a follow on whatever social media platform you view us on, and on YouTube if you like it on YouTube. helps us out so much. Lets us know that you enjoy the show, and also keeps you updated for whenever we go live and we do shows like this, which we're going to keep doing all throughout the off season. We're going to have a lot to talk about the rest of the off season, and we're just glad that you're here to do it with us.
Absolutely. Who do you want us to play a review next? Who do you need to know about? Were they
Tell
good?
us.
Were they bad? Let us know. The best place to
Wanna
do
know.
it is probably the YouTube comments, but you can hit us up on socials as well.
Yeah, let us know. We've got who we think we want to talk about next. But if you guys got an opinion, there's somebody you want to hear us talk about, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's going to be our show for today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're going to be here all off season. Like I've continued to say, we're going to be here. There's going to be more news. Hopefully going to be some positive stadium stuff to talk about next week. But for now, raise up.
Raise up.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.